What happens to your blood sugar when you walk right after a meal? They say a short walk after a meal is just a pleasant habit, a gentle tradition, a cultural ritual, but beneath the surface of that simple movement, something measurable begins to change. Inside the bloodstream, glucose molecules surge like a rising tide. The pancreas responds, hormones travel, muscles awaken, cells shift their fuel preference, enzymes accelerate, blood vessels widen, a quiet metabolic negotiation begins. What happens to your blood sugar when your legs begin to move? Minutes after eating. Does walking truly burn off a meal, or is something far more intricate unfolding beneath the skin? This is not about weight loss. It is about physiology, because every meal sets off a cascade, and every step interacts with that cascade. Let's begin. One name the first rise. The moment food enters the digestive tract, a transformation begins. Carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, small transportable molecules that slip through the intestinal wall and enter the bloodstream. Within minutes, blood sugar begins to rise. Not dramatically at first, just a steady incline. The blood becomes richer with fuel. This rise is not abnormal, it is expected. The body anticipates it. Specialized cells in the pancreas, known as beta cells, constantly monitor the bloodstream. As glucose concentrations climb, these cells respond by releasing insulin, a hormone that acts as a molecular key. Insulin travels through the bloodstream, signaling tissues to open their doors and accept incoming fuel. The liver receives part of this glucose load first. It stores some as glycogen, a compact reserve for later use. The rest circulates onward, reaching muscles, fat tissue, and organs that require immediate energy. In a healthy system, this surge peaks within about 30 to 60 minutes after a meal. Then gradually levels begin to fall. But during this window, this post-meal rise, the bloodstream is temporarily in a state of abundance. Glucose molecules drift like cargo ships waiting for docking ports. How efficiently they dock depends on what happens next. And this is where movement quietly changes the story. Muscles as glucose sinks. Skeletal muscles are the largest glucose storage site in the human body. When they are still, they rely heavily on insulin to absorb glucose. Insulin signals the movement of specialized transport proteins called GLUT4 to the muscle cell surface. These proteins act like gates, allowing glucose to pass from blood into the cell. But movement introduces a second pathway. When muscles contract, even during something as gentle as walking, a different signal cascade activates inside the muscle fiber. Calcium levels shift. Energy molecules like AMP increase. These internal changes stimulate GLUT4 transporters to move to the cell surface without requiring large amounts of insulin. The muscle begins to draw glucose directly from the bloodstream. It does not wait for hormonal instruction. It responds to mechanical demand. Each step during a walk activates thousands of muscle fibers. Each fiber increases its glucose uptake capacity. The bloodstream, momentarily elevated after a meal, now encounters open cellular doors. Glucose is pulled inward and converted into glycogen for storage or burned immediately for energy. This process is not dramatic. There is no sensation of sugar leaving the blood. But at a microscopic level, millions of molecules are being redirected. Walking turns muscles into active glucose sinks, and in doing so, it subtly reshapes the post-meal blood sugar curve. The insulin conversation, insulin and muscle are in constant dialogue. After a meal, the pancreas releases insulin proportionate to the glucose rise. The higher the spike, the stronger the hormonal signal required to restore balance. But when muscles are contracting, the conversation changes. Because muscle contraction independently stimulates glucose uptake, the demand for insulin decreases. The pancreas does not need to release as much hormone to achieve the same effect. And this reduces what scientists call insulin load, the total amount of insulin required to manage a meal. Over time, lower insulin demand matters. The pancreas is not an infinite factory. Beta cells respond repeatedly to daily glucose spikes. When spikes are high and frequent, insulin output must also remain high. This can gradually strain the system, particularly in individuals with reduced insulin sensitivity. Walking after a meal reduces the peak glucose level. A smaller peak requires less insulin. The hormonal wave becomes smoother. This is not about eliminating insulin. Insulin remains essential. It coordinates storage, regulates liver output, and ensures glucose reaches necessary tissues. But movement allows muscle to share the workload. The pancreas releases, the muscle absorbs, and the bloodstream stabilizes with less hormonal effort. A cooperative system rather than a reactive one. The silent stabilization blood sugar does not behave as a flat line. It rises and falls in curves. After a carbohydrate-rich meal, the curve can be steep. A rapid incline followed by a compensatory drop as insulin clears glucose from circulation. In some individuals, this drop can feel like sudden fatigue or heaviness. Walking alters the shape of that curve. Instead of a sharp peak, the rise becomes moderated. Instead of a rapid fall, the descent is steadier. This effect is measurable through continuous glucose monitoring. Studies show that even 10 to 20 minutes of light walking after eating reduces peak glucose levels and shortens the time spent above elevated thresholds. The bloodstream remains within a narrower range. This reduction in glycemic variability, the degree of fluctuation between highs and lows, matters biologically. Large spikes can temporarily increase oxidative stress and inflammatory signaling within blood vessel walls. Repeated daily over years, this variability may contribute to vascular wear. Walking does not eliminate glucose. It redistributes it earlier. The muscles consume part of the incoming fuel immediately, rather than allowing it to accumulate. From the outside, nothing dramatic appears to happen. No alarm, no obvious shift. But inside the vessels, the glucose curve is quieter. Less turbulence, less friction, a subtle stabilization, initiated by something as simple as motion. Myths of burning it off. There is a common belief that a walk after a meal simply burns off what was eaten, as if the body were a furnace, as if calories disappeared in direct proportion to steps taken. But biology is more intricate than subtraction. A short walk, 10, 15, even 20 minutes, does increase energy expenditure. Muscles contract, ATP is consumed, oxygen demand rises. Some glucose and fatty acids are oxidized for fuel. Yet the total energy burned during a gentle walk is modest compared to the caloric content of most meals. The real shift is not in total calories. It is in timing and traffic. After a meal, glucose floods the bloodstream quickly. If movement does not occur, the body must rely primarily on insulin to move that glucose into tissues. The liver stores some, fat tissue stores some. Muscles absorb what insulin directs them to take. Walking changes the destination pattern. Contracting muscle fibers pull glucose inward immediately, much prioritizing oxidation and glycogen storage within active tissue. This early uptake reduces how long glucose lingers in circulation and reduces how much insulin is required to manage it. The meal is not erased, it is redistributed. Instead of a large portion being directed towards storage under high insulin influence, a portion is used in real time. Energy balance over a full day still depends on total intake and total expenditure. Walking after eating does not cancel excess consumption. It does not neutralize large surpluses. What it modifies is the glucose curve, the amplitude and duration of the post-meal rise. It is a regulatory effect, not a compensatory one. The body is not trying to undo a meal, it is trying to manage it efficiently. And efficiency, in physiology, often matters more than raw arithmetic. Long-term metabolic effects. When post-meal movement becomes habitual, subtle changes accumulate. Each walk slightly reduces glucose peaks. Each reduced peak slightly lowers insulin demand. Over weeks and months, tissues experience a more stable metabolic environment. Muscle cells repeatedly stimulated by contraction maintain higher insulin sensitivity. Their GLUT4 transport systems remain responsive. Glucose entry becomes smoother, requiring less hormonal force. The pancreas benefits as well. Lower repeated insulin surges reduce chronic secretory pressure on beta cells. The endocrine workload becomes steadier rather than reactive. Blood vessels also respond. Elevated glucose spikes can transiently increase oxidative stress within the endothelial lining. the delicate cellular layer that lines arteries. Repeated sharp fluctuations over years contribute to microscopic wear, similar to constant turbulence in a river against its banks. Blunted glucose excursions create less metabolic friction. Markers of low-grade inflammation, often elevated in sedentary metabolic states, tend to improve when post-meal movement becomes consistent. Not dramatically, but measurably. Even metabolic aging is influenced by variability. Cells exposed to repeated high glucose environments undergo more glycation, a chemical binding of sugar to proteins that gradually alters structure and function. Reducing extreme peaks may reduce cumulative exposure. None of these effects are immediate transformations. They are cumulative. Metabolism is shaped by repetition. A single walk shifts one curve. Hundreds of walks reshape a pattern. Over time, the body becomes more metabolically flexible, capable of handling incoming nutrients with less strain, not because food disappears, but because the system adapts to movement as a regular signal. Reading the body's signals. After a meal, some people feel steady, others feel heavy, warm, or drowsy. These sensations are not random. They reflect shifts in blood flow, glucose dynamics, and hormonal activity. When blood sugar rises sharply, insulin follows. Insulin not only moves glucose into tissues, it also influences other systems. It promotes storage. It shifts fuel usage away from fat oxidation and toward carbohydrate utilization. If glucose rises quickly and then drops rapidly, the brain, which depends heavily on stable glucose, may register the decline as a dip in available fuel. This can manifest physically as fatigue, shakiness, or reduced alertness. Post-meal sleepiness is partly related to blood being redirected toward the digestive tract, but glycemic variability also plays a role. Rapid fluctuations require rapid adjustments. Walking moderates these swings. A steadier curve often corresponds with more stable physical energy. Less abrupt insulin response means fewer rapid shifts in circulating glucose. The absence of a dramatic crash does not mean glucose did not rise. It means the rise and fall were gradual. The body communicates through physical signals long before dysfunction appears. Frequent intense post-meal fatigue can reflect exaggerated glucose peaks and compensatory drops. Stable energy often reflects smoother regulation. These signals are metabolic feedback, not emotions, not preferences, but biochemical responses. The bloodstream records every meal. Muscles respond to every movement. Hormones adjust continuously. Understanding these signals reveals a simple truth. Blood sugar is not just about numbers. It is about flow, timing, and balance inside a living system. The moving balance. Every meal sets a metabolic wave in motion. Glucose rises, insulin answers, cells prepare to receive. When the body remains still, regulation depends largely on hormones to restore balance. When the body moves, even gently, muscles participate directly in that regulation. They absorb circulating fuel. They reduce the height of the glucose peak. They soften the demand placed on the pancreas. Walking after a meal does not erase calories. It does not override biology. It works with biology. Over time, repeated movement reshapes glucose patterns, eases hormonal strain, and reduces metabolic turbulence inside blood vessels. The effects are quiet, cumulative, and measurable. The body does not wait for crisis to speak. It signals through curves, energy levels, and physiological shifts long before dysfunction appears. Health is not sudden, it is cumulative. Understanding the body is the first step to respecting it. If you found this exploration of blood sugar and movement insightful, consider subscribing for more science-based health documentaries. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know which biological process you would like to see explained next. This channel continues to explore the physiology behind everyday health. Because inside your bloodstream, every step leaves a trace.